Everything here is animated. One ping. One ping.
Now you know where that comes from.
That's one of my favorite movies.
Thermal with the shafter.
All the movies I've ever seen, it's the one that got it closest to the book. Did it by narrowing the scope. They did a great job.
What movie is Infrared October. Okay, guys, we're going to start.
Let's go. Now, today we've been talking primarily about safety. We call this the safety meeting. And a lot of what we've talked about today is safety with regard to procedures. A couple things we want to talk about very quickly before I begin. Number one, Dan is concerned that we let you know that entering and leaving gaggles is a very, very important skill.
Yeah.
That if we go into a gaggle incorrectly, we endanger a lot of people. So you need to make sure that you know how to do that. If you're going to share a thermal with someone, you need to know how to get in and get out quickly. You don't get in by going through the middle. Now, the guys that are laughing because someone did that to them.
Yeah.
Okay? You don't leave by going through the middle. Now, if you read George Moffat or some of the other great pilots, they say, oh, the best thing to do is to crank it over and head out through the middle where you're going to speed up in the lift. We don't do that in a gaggle. We just tangent off to the side. And when we come in, we tangent in. When we're flying in a power field, we have a pattern. We come in on the 45. Why do we come on the 45? So we can figure out how to space ourselves into the other aircraft. In a glider, we're in a circle. And so we have to try to figure out this is where the circle is, watching the other gliders. And if we need to swing around to get in rather than coming straight in like this. You're trying to position yourself, especially for the gliders that are at the same altitude as you, so that you're on the opposite side or at least behind them. And you need to let them know where you are. So that's just a real quick gaggle in kind of a discussion. And it's not, again, I don't really want to try to cover that here today and now. This is what I want to cover. Thank you. Everybody's seen this word before. Every single one of us possess it. Okay.
Trying to take notes.
Okay. Timidity. Not exactly different. Related. Okay. Approval. What motivates you in life? Usually one of the things that motivates you is approval. Everybody knows about the carrot and the stick, right? The carrot is the approval, and the stick is disapproval. Okay? So what I want you to be thinking about today is we are talking about procedures, we're talking about things like that. What I want you to be thinking about today is not the procedures, but your mind. Your mind. Because your mind is the most important thing. We already talked about gaggles, you missed it.
Okay, thank you.
But your mind is one of the most important things that we can have in an aircraft. And what you do and how you're feeling and how you're approaching things are as important as anything else that's happening in the glider. Confrontational. We all like that, right? Is there anybody here that truly likes confrontation? Besides Craig.
Hey, not out.
Oh, yeah. No, I said that to Craig because I knew Craig would enjoy the con. Okay. Non-confrontational, that's what most of us are, right? Okay. These feelings, these reactions that we have to our peers and to what we overhear at the glider port actually modify our behavior. And that modification of behavior directly affects safety. It has nothing to do with how well I can stir the sticks, how well I can pre-flight an airplane, who's running ops today, has none of that. Okay, some of this is taken from a talk that I heard presented by a gentleman named Ron Machado. If you know who Ron Machado is, he's a aviation speaker. He's a psychologist. He's trained in psychology. He's a flight instructor. He's a speaker in a lot of aviation environments. He came to Oregon about 10 years ago and gave a presentation to a bunch of us. And he said, the biggest predator of pilots is... Now, what do you think it is? Trying to save the airplane. Trying to save the airplane. How many of you are willing, have made the commitment in your mind, I am going to crush this thing if I have to? You haven't made that agreement to yourself yet. This airplane is not as important as me. This airplane is not as important as Rolf. It's not as important as Dan. Don't try to save the airplane. Try to save yourself, but don't try to save the airplane. All right, another predator. Trying not to disappoint our passengers. One of the things that Ron said in his talk was, one of the ways to change the way we go about doing a flight is to get an agreement from our passengers before we begin the flight that if for some reason we can't complete the flight, that's okay with them. Because if we carry all that burden with us and we feel the responsibility to ensure that everything's going to be okay for everyone around us, and they don't care, but we don't know that, we've put a level of stress, going back to the stress that King was talking about, put a level of stress on us, an expectation that we may not be able to complete. And the desire in ourself to make sure that the people that are on board are pleased is very high. Next. Seeking approval from our peers. You know, we like each other for the most part. And we value each other's opinion for the most part. And we talk to each other a lot. And we listen to someone else talking to someone else. Carrot and stick, right? Carrot and stick. The carrot is we want the approval. The stick is we don't want any disapproval. And so we manage what we're doing to try to meet these personal, internal feelings and goals, not voiced out. It's happening inside our head. Okay, go ahead. So let's talk a little bit about unintended consequences. Now, I have a famous old story, and when I say a famous old story, it's older than me, so that makes it pretty old. And this is a story about a young boy named Epaminondas. Anybody ever heard of Epaminondas? Okay, well, go ahead and hit it. So Epaminondas' mother is telling him that she just made some nice pies and they're out cooling on the stoop. She said, "You be very careful stepping around those pies." That's what she said this way. And so, Epaminondas was very careful how he stepped on the pies. Go ahead. He stepped right in the middle of each and every one. It's a fun little story. We need to be clear what we are saying and how it affects others. Go ahead. Now this is a statement that we overhear at the field. I guess we'll go get a cart, go down and get him. Sure looks like you could have made it to the stop line. What kind of a message are we sharing with ourselves when we make a comment like that? David?
It seems like that
You're asking him to be unsafe.
We're actually encouraging an unsafe activity by being unwilling or making a comment. You know, maybe we say it in jest. Maybe we're more than happy to take the cart down and go pick them up. But I overheard you say that, you overheard me say that, and now everyone says, hey, you know, the rest of the club will be really, really happy if I do what? Roll up to the stop line. Because everybody's going to be happy and I get approval. Oh, you did a great landing. You stopped right at the stop line. How many of us are in the peanut gallery? Everybody's hand goes up. All of us are in the peanut gallery, right? Every single one of us is in the peanut gallery. Peanut galleries have great value, but they also have unintended consequences. Why is that downwind low? Are you in that cockpit? What's he going to do next? You don't know. You have a new student standing next to you. You have a ride waiting for a ride, and overhearing these conversations and going, they fly low around here? Okay. I'm just saying that, was this a bad comment? I don't know. This alone doesn't tell me, right? But we have to think about what is going to be the result of how that comment might be interpreted. Sir. This is the one I like after the presentation we got earlier. The ops officers in charge, they should talk to that pilot. Stand up, Ethan. Yeah. Ethan, one or more times, Ethan is going to be on the field as the ops officer because that's how he buys his time in the gliders. He's going to take one of your ops days and you're going to pay him some money, and the more the better, and he's going to take your ops day and he's going to spend that money to become a better glider pilot. He's going to outfly all of us before too long, I promise. But how many of you are going to be responsive when Ethan comes up and says, you know, I need you to do this, or I need you to do that, or that was not something that was really in the best interest of the club?
Yeah, it's going to get my back up for the most part.
Yeah. So, yeah, none of us want to be confronted, and none of us want to be the confronter. We don't want to be. This isn't about wants, gentlemen, ladies.
It'll work better on a one-to-one basis rather than a public humiliation.
Absolutely. I'm not trying to explain how to do it.
Right.
I'm just trying to say that these phrases, these things that we overhear, think about these phrases. I never, I always, and a good pilot. What kind of messages, unintended consequences, can occur when we use or hear these kinds of phrases? Now, here's my piece of paper. This is an article in Flying Magazine a few years back, June 11th, 2010. And it reports on a study being done by Avemco, who is a well-known general aviation insurance company, one of the biggest in the world. And they actually commissioned a couple of studies, one by a gentleman named Bill Rhodes, who retired as a professor of psychology from the Air Force Academy, where he works with Air Force pilots, right? And he did a series of studies, and those that this is the one we did before. He did a series of studies, and I can give you a copy of it, but basically, when we look at what happens to people, the number of people killed in a fatal accident averages around 1.6. It's higher than that in gliders, guys, much higher. That's 1.6 hours, 1.6 hours per 100,000 It's actually closer to 6. Ours is closer to 9.
Accidents per.
Huh?
Accidents per. Accidents per.
Okay, that's accidents per. This is fatals per. But ours is higher. It's believed that more GA hours are flown solo than with passengers. It looks like the presence of a passenger may make pilots change their behavior, assume more risk, or take on more risk. And certainly, the presence of someone to impress on the ground leads pilots to do things that they would not do were they alone. Now, all of this relates, guys, right? What you overhear me saying to you, what I overhear you saying to him, whether we choose to internalize it in decisively or not, it's going to cause an effect. Go ahead.
Anybody else need to say anything?
Anybody else need to sign this over here? Okay, well, let's go here. Oh, it's going to go right down this side. Go ahead. You've already heard this today. The field is yours. It's yours. It's yours. It's yours. It's not the club's. It's yours. And you are responsible. Go ahead. The planes are yours. And your privileges. This is the unintended consequence. Your privileges are affected by unsafe actions of others. So that puts upon us the responsibility to think in a safe way. We're talking about thinking. We're not necessarily doing things. We need to be thinking. Thinking, how can what I'm doing make a difference in safety? Number one, be accepting of concern from others. You know, if you come to me and you say, Mike, that didn't look very good, what was going on? If I'm not willing to accept that, I'm a pretty bad pilot, in my opinion. And you'll find me more than willing to accept comments from virtually anyone. Go ahead. Those of you who've ever taken a parenting class, this is a famous phrase. Catch them doing something right. We're talking about teenagers. Catch them doing something right. That's a big carrot, not a big stick. Catch them doing something right. Go up to one of us, each of us, and say, boy, I really appreciate that you did this. I see how that's a safe thing, and I really appreciate your concern for safety. Now that sounds kind of contrived, but you understand what I'm saying. This is the goal. We're going to start in the U.S. We're going to take over the world. Right? Thank you.
Is everybody on?